They say family is life's greatest treasure. But what if it's the very thing that wounds you in ways no time or prayer can ever heal? My name is Vivian Wilson. For 34 years, I lived for my loved ones, believing that love, devotion, and sacrifice would one day be repaid with gratitude. I was terribly wrong. Before I take you back to where it all began, tell me where you're watching from. And if this story touches something deep inside you, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow, I'll reveal something I've never told anyone, not even my own family. My name is Vivian, and I've spent my whole life trying to be a good mother, a loving wife, and a caring grandmother. I was born and raised in Louisiana, in a family where, even during hard times, there was always space for warmth and holidays. My husband Charles passed away 10 years ago, and since then, I've tried to keep our Christmas traditions alive, so our children would always feel that love was the foundation of our home. I've always believed that family is sacred. But last December, that belief was shattered. My son Malcolm got married 3 years ago to a woman named Candace. On the surface, she looked like the American dream. A perfect smile, a successful marketing career, always posting pictures of smoothies and her morning rituals on Instagram. But something about her never sat right with me. Her eyes were cold, not the kind of cold you explain with fatigue or stress. It was calculating, like a shark before it strikes. When Malcolm first brought her home, she smiled but asked me nothing. She didn't show any interest in my sweet potato pie recipe or offer to help in the kitchen. But she did say, as she walked past my favorite cinnamon-scented candle, "It smells kind of old in here." I said nothing then. Every Christmas I decorated our home with wreaths, garlands, old family ornaments. Even that angel figurine with the chipped wing that Malcolm made in first grade always sat on top of the tree. It was more than a holiday, it was our altar, a place where everyone was welcomed, or at least used to be. It all started on December 18th. I was wrapping gifts, cozy knitted socks for Candace, a rare whiskey for Malcolm, a soft blanket for their son Jason. That's when I got the message. "Hi Vivian. This year we've decided to spend Christmas just as a nuclear family. We need space. I think you'll feel more comfortable at home. Thanks for understanding." I read it 5 times, then checked if I had the wrong sender. No. It was from Candace, my daughter-in-law. The woman whose child I babysat for hours while she was at yoga for 3 hours straight. It felt like a slap. I tried calling. Malcolm didn't answer. I left a voicemail. I texted. Nothing. The next morning, I drove to their house. I knocked. Through the peephole, I saw Candace whispering something to Malcolm. He looked guilty, but they didn't open the door. I stood on their porch, holding a bag of gingerbread cookies and a jar of my homemade fig jam. I placed them neatly at the door and left. But I wasn't one to just give up. Something about this didn't feel right. This wasn't just a whim. I felt it deep down. Something was wrong in my son's home, and I was going to find out what. Back at my house, I opened the file drawer in what used to be Charles's office. Inside was a document, one that now meant everything. The mortgage agreement. The house Malcolm and Candace lived in. It was legally under my name. They couldn't get approved for a good loan, so I stepped in because I'm a mother. They paid me rent, which covered the mortgage, and sometimes helped pay for my medication. I never reminded them of it. I didn't need thanks, just respect. And now I was not a fit for their space. So I went to the bank. I smiled at the receptionist, handed her the documents, and asked to suspend all further payments. When she asked why, I answered calmly, because I owned the house, and they seemed to have forgotten that. But that was only the beginning. When they found out, it was chaos. Malcolm showed up at my house, banging on the door, yelling that I was ruining their life. And Candace? She sent me a letter from her lawyer, claiming she had a right to privacy and independence, and that my action violated their family boundaries. I laughed quietly as I read it. Oh, sweet girl. You have no idea who you're dealing with. From the moment Leroy told me about the bank accounts and the other men, I felt like I was trapped in a crime drama. Only this was real. My real life. My son, whom I brought into this world with sweat and tears, was being used by a woman who saw family as nothing more than a costume. But the worst part, he had no idea. Malcolm still didn't return my calls, he ignored my messages. He even declined a voicemail from Pastor Henry, who used to be like a second father to him. I realized Candace had isolated him. She was manipulating him, probably using guilt, fear, maybe even blackmail. I decided to play hardball. Through my lawyer, I sent them an official termination of the rental agreement and a demand to vacate the property within 30 days. The house, into which I had poured not just money, but memories, soul, and legacy. 2 days later, I received an anonymous envelope. No name, no return address. Inside were several photographs. In one, Candace was wrapped in the arms of a man in a business suit. The date? The same day she claimed to be on a couples retreat. In another, she was laughing at a bar, martini in hand, while Jason sat off to the side with a tablet. I didn't know who sent them. Maybe one of Leroy's contacts, maybe a jilted lover. But those photographs were the final nail. I didn't want to involve the child, but I couldn't ignore the truth. Jason was a victim too. A gentle boy with Malcolm's eyes, quiet and sensitive. He didn't deserve a mother like that. I contacted my lawyer and filed for temporary custody of Jason. It was a painful decision. I never wanted to tear a family apart, but she already had. The documents were filed. Candace lost her mind. She came to my house, not knocking, but pounding on the door like she wanted to break it down. I opened the door, calm and composed. "You crazy old bitch," she screamed. "You're destroying my life." "No, Candace," I said quietly. "You destroyed your life. I'm just done cleaning up after you." She lunged at me, but I was already recording. Every word, every insult, captured. "You're not getting my son," she hissed. "Even if he's not yours by blood, you're nothing to him." I froze. What did she just say? "What did you say?" I asked. "Oh, I misspoke." "No, Candace, you didn't. You said, even if he's not yours by blood. What does that mean?" My stomach turned to ice. My son. Not mine? When the letter from the lawyer landed in my hands, I held it for a long time before opening it. The paper smelled of fresh ink and coldness, the same kind I felt in her heart. Every word spat in my face. They called me uncooperative, emotionally unstable, and even hostile. Me, the woman who raised her son alone after her husband died, the one who gave every last penny to make their lives better. That evening, I sat in the kitchen at my old oak table, thinking about the first time Candace entered our lives. She brought with her the scent of expensive perfume and frosty politeness. Malcolm, who used to call me every Saturday to ask what kind of soup to cook, now barely texted back, "Okay," or "busy." Something snapped in me. I pulled out the photo album. On the first page, little Malcolm holding his scruffy teddy bear. Then his graduation picture, beaming with pride. Then his wedding. At that wedding, I felt like a guest, not a mother. Candace had planned it all, never asking me a single thing. Not even about napkin colors. None of my recipes made it onto the table. Even the music felt foreign. But I endured it, for my son, for the family. 3 days after I canceled the mortgage payments, I got a call from our neighbor, Mrs. Harper, the woman who sees everything. Her voice was anxious. "Vivian, honey, I don't like to gossip, but I saw a black SUV at your son's place. A man was carrying boxes out. A lot of them." I understood. They were moving, probably searching for a new place. But why so suddenly? Curiosity mixed with dread. I drove past their house, parked a block away, and watched. A man I didn't recognize walked out of the garage. Young, muscular, tattooed. He hugged Candace. Not like a friend, not like a relative, like a lover. She laughed, tossed her hair back, and then kissed him. I couldn't breathe. The air in the car felt thick. In that moment I knew. I wasn't the threat to their space. Candace was. That night I didn't sleep. My thoughts spun like clockwork gears. Who was that man? Did Malcolm know? Did he suspect anything? I couldn't just sit and wait. I needed proof. And I knew exactly who could help. My late husband's brother, Leroy, was a retired private investigator from Atlanta. Cynical, sharp, but loyal to the bone. I called and explained everything. At first, he laughed. Well, damn, Vivian. Looks like Christmas is coming early. Leroy, this is serious. I need the truth. All of it. He hit the road the same day. Meanwhile, I returned to church, a place I hadn't visited in a long time. Pastor Henry listened quietly. I poured it all out. My voice cracked. He handed me a tissue and said, "Sometimes God removes our illusions to reveal the truth. And even truth, painful as it is, can be a blessing. Your love, Vivian, isn't in wreaths and pies. It's in the fact that you're still fighting for your son, even when he doesn't see it." Those words gave me strength. The next day, Leroy called. His voice wasn't joking anymore. "Viv, this ain't just an affair. Candace has a hidden account. Nearly $180,000 in it. Transfers come in regularly, from different sources. Some from Malcolm, but others from men you've never heard of." "You're saying she's living a double life?" "I'm saying she's using Malcolm and manipulating several other men. One of her payments came through the same law firm that sent you that cease and desist. She's using legal covers. This is bigger than you think." I was shaking. My son was being used. A puppet. A front. And when the illusion cracked, she tried to get rid of the old furniture. That furniture was me. But I wasn't old furniture. I was the oak tree they grew under. And now that tree had roots deep enough to bring the storm. I sent off a rush DNA test. I had Malcolm's childhood toothbrush and a small blood sample from a past doctor's visit. Don't ask how, a mother always finds a way. 3 days later, the results came back. Malcolm was my biological son, no doubt. But I understood. Candace hadn't slipped. She was trying to break me, to see if she could shatter the very foundation of who I was. Leroy called with more intel. One of Candace's partners was involved in a major financial fraud case. And Candace showed up in his bank logs as an assistant. They were funneling money through shell companies and cleaning it via a charity, registered under her younger sister's name. "You've got a con artist living under your roof," Leroy said. "And if you think that's the worst of it, you're wrong." On Christmas night, instead of sharing dinner with family, I sat alone. The candles flickered, my pie went cold, the gifts sat unopened. But I knew. This was the quiet before the storm. Soon, Candace would lose everything. Her mask, her comfort, her control. Maybe even her freedom. And me? I was going to get my son back. Even if I had to pull him out from the bottom. Yes, that was me. I handed over the documents, the photos, Leroy's data. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was saving my son. Jason. Myself. The agent in the gray suit read Candace her rights. She tried to play the victim. Tears, pleas, even clinging to Jason like a shield. But it was too late. The web had unraveled. The hidden accounts, the recordings, the fake firms, her connections with individuals under investigation in 3 states. And the worst part, she had filed forged paperwork trying to transfer the deed of the house into her name. Malcolm sat on the porch afterward, numb. Jason leaned against him, quiet. "I didn't know, Mom," he said. "I swear, I didn't know." "I know, baby, you just wanted love." "But she gave you a cage and called it home." He looked at me the way he used to as a boy, when he scraped his knee and didn't know whether to cry or be brave. "I'm sorry I didn't listen to you." I hugged him, tight. The kind of hug only a mother can give to a son who's finally found his way back. The house was now quiet. I reclaimed legal ownership. Jason was safe with me. Candace was awaiting trial. Her career, her image, her lifestyle, all gone. And I had my family. A little worn, a little bruised, but real. I looked up at the crooked star Jason had taped to the window. It leaned sideways, but it glowed. Sometimes, destruction is the first step toward healing. And me? I'm not just a mother. I'm a woman who refused to let what she built be torn down. I thought that after Candace's arrest, the worst was behind us. But that was only the beginning of a long road, not just to reclaim my family, but to uncover truths buried deeper than I ever imagined. A week after her arrest, I got a call from the police. I assumed it would be another update on the case. But the voice on the other end was rough and tense. "Mrs. Hale? This is Detective Rivers. We need you to come to the station. There's been a new development in your daughter-in-law's case." I arrived with trembling hands. Detective Rivers led me to a private room and laid a thin folder in front of me. "We've been digging deeper into Candace's communication logs. We found encrypted emails. Some of them mention your late husband, Charles." My stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "We believe Candace was connected to someone who was involved in real estate fraud nearly a decade ago. Your family name appears in several threads. More alarming, she was searching for documents related to your insurance benefits after Charles's death. And she was digging into whether Charles had children outside the marriage." "Excuse me." The world began to spin again. "We're still investigating, but there's reason to believe Candace wasn't just after money. She may have been looking for deeper ties, inheritance, leverage, anything that could give her control. She built a web, and you were one of her entry points." I left the station numb. If he had another family, then had I ever truly known him? I went home and opened a box I hadn't touched in years. Among old letters and photos was one envelope, never opened. It arrived a month after Charles's funeral, with no return address. I always assumed it was a sympathy note, but never had the strength to read it. This time, I opened it. "You didn't know all of him, Vivian, but you knew the best of him. Forgive him. He left with secrets, but he loved you truly." No signature. The ink had faded, the words like a whisper from another life. But now I understood. Candace wasn't just trying to destroy me financially. She had been digging for weak spots. She wanted total control. She wasn't just a threat. She was a strategist. And now that I knew, I couldn't afford to be passive. Malcolm started visiting daily. He was changing. No longer the soft, hesitant man who hid behind others' decisions. He was taking charge. One night, he said what I had waited so long to hear. "I'm filing for an annulment. I want to sue her, for fraud, for emotional damages, for misusing my name." I nodded. "But I don't know if I can ever forgive myself for letting this happen to you, to Jason." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Do you know why I always held on to Christmas? Because it's the one time of year when even the coldest hearts can thaw. You're not to blame for loving someone. She's to blame for turning that love into a weapon." 2 days later, I got a letter from the prison psychologist. It said Candace was behaving unpredictably, refusing counsel, and claiming she didn't care what happened to her. Most surprisingly, she had requested to see me. My first instinct was disgust. Why would she want to see me? Then I remembered Pastor Henry's words. "Forgiveness is not a gift to others. It's a path to freedom, for yourself." I agreed. She walked into the visitation room in an orange jumpsuit, no makeup, her eyes empty. This wasn't the Candace I knew, the manipulator in heels. This was a hollow woman. "Why did you ask to see me?" I asked. She met my gaze. "Because you won. And because I want you to know. You were right all along. I hated you because you were real. And I never was." "You destroyed my family," I said calmly. "But I won't let you destroy my heart." She lowered her head. "You're stronger than I thought." I stood. "No, Candace, I'm just no longer afraid." When I stepped outside, the air felt different, lighter. Cold wind bit at my skin, but all I felt was warmth. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's acknowledging the pain and choosing not to live in it. I turned on the car radio. The song playing? Silent Night. Charles's favorite. And for the first time in years, I smiled, for real. After my visit with Candace, I returned home as if I had passed through some kind of sacred ritual. It was like I'd shed chains I didn't even know I'd been carrying. The walls of my house, which had recently felt empty and cold, suddenly seemed to breathe. I lit cinnamon candles, brewed ginger tea, and sat by the window. For the first time in years, I just sat, no anxiety, no racing thoughts. But peace is a fragile thing. It lasts only until the next knock at the door. It was Leroy, a folder in his hand. His face was grim. "We found something else," he said, sitting at my kitchen table. "You need to know." He laid out the documents. And there it was, a name I hadn't seen since high school. Maria Hale. "My younger sister," I whispered. "She died in a car crash years ago." "Not exactly," Leroy said. "We checked the records. There was a crash, yes. But the body they claimed was hers was never verified by DNA. They identified her from documents and jewelry. There's strong reason to believe she faked her death." My heart clenched. "But why?" "We don't know yet, but her name came up in Candace's files, indirectly, through shell companies. And here's the thing. One of the accounts Candace was moving money through, it was registered to Maria, with an address in Chicago. At first, I refused to believe it. Maria, my only sister, we'd been inseparable once. After our parents passed, we slowly drifted apart. And then came that crash, the one I didn't attend, because I was too wrapped in work and grief. I always blamed myself. Now I had to ask, had she ever really died? "Do you think Candace knew her?" I asked, still reeling. "Not just knew her," Leroy said. "We believe they were working together." It felt like I was drowning in a thriller that wouldn't end. Only this wasn't fiction. It was my life. The next morning, I got a call from an investigator in Chicago. They confirmed that Maria Hale had been involved in registering multiple fake consulting firms. They looked legitimate, but were fronts for transferring money. And the names, the fake addresses, all lined up with Candace's network. I requested access to photographs and video logs tied to these businesses. 3 days later, I received an ID scan. It was her. Older, paler, but still Maria. She was alive. I didn't know what to feel. Betrayal? Anger? Grief? The woman I had cried for, prayed for, buried in my heart, had let me suffer for decades. "Do you think Candace was using her?" I asked Leroy. "Possibly, or maybe the other way around. Either way, they were connected." "I want to see her. I need the truth. Even if it breaks me." He agreed to find her. And that night, I couldn't sleep. Malcolm and Jason now visited every evening. We baked cookies, watched old movies, put the angel figurine back on top of the tree. The house echoed with laughter again. Brief moments of normalcy. But each time Jason looked up at me with those dark, curious eyes and said, "Grandma, tell me a story," I felt a twinge in my chest, because I didn't know which story to tell anymore. One with a happy ending, or one where the villain wore my sister's face? A week later, Leroy called again. "We found her." "Where?" "Arizona. Living under a different name. Still using Hale in some paperwork. And yes, she knew Candace. She introduced her to the investor circles. That's where it all started." "I want to meet her." "Are you sure?" "She owes me the truth. Not for closure, just for dignity." I didn't know what would come of the meeting. Reconciliation. Destruction. A new chapter. But I knew this much. My family deserved the truth. And I deserved peace. even if it meant dragging every buried secret into the light. Because I am Vivian. And I am no longer the woman who can be fooled by a smile or silenced by guilt. I flew to Arizona in early January. The sun was hot. Ironic, since my soul was still stuck in winter. I wore a gray dress and brought only one bag. I didn't need outfits. I needed answers. Maria's house was on the outskirts of Tucson. Beige walls, succulents in the window, the kind of place that whispered normalcy. You'd never guess a ghost lived inside, one that haunted me for 20 years. I stood on the porch, hesitant to ring the bell. And then, the door opened on its own. She was standing there. Same posture, same mole by her lip. Same eyes, but now lined with weariness and something close to fear. "Hi, Vivian," she said, as if we'd just had lunch yesterday. "Hello, Maria." Silence hung between us like desert heat. Even the wind seemed to stop. "You're not surprised?" Leroy called. She nodded and stepped back, gesturing for me to enter. We sat on her porch. She held a mug of green tea. My hands were clenched in fists. "You faked your death. You let me bury you. I talked to your photo for 10 years. Why?" Maria was quiet for a long time. "They threatened me. The man I was with, he was dangerous. I witnessed a deal I wasn't supposed to see. He said if I didn't disappear, he'd kill me, or you, or someone else we loved." "And you couldn't warn me?" "Would you have let me go if I had?" I didn't know what to say. "But then you never came back, never tried to reach me." I watched, through friends, through attorneys. I knew when Charles died. I knew about Malcolm's house. I knew about Candace. "You knew she was a fraud?" She looked away. "I thought she was just ambitious. Smart. Reminded me of me when I was younger. I introduced her to the right people. Then she went too far. She destroyed my family, Maria." "I know. And I'm to blame," she cried then. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet sobs, like a child caught in a lie too deep to undo. I left her house hollow inside. She wasn't a villain. She was a human who made desperate choices. And I didn't know what to do with that. When I returned to Louisiana, Malcolm met me at the train station. His face was solemn. "The court accepted your filing. Candace officially lost custody. Jason's with you now." "And you?" "I'm still his father. And I'm going to be here. Every single day." Spring bloomed. Jason started pre-K. Malcolm began teaching science again, finally doing what he loved. I focused on the garden. I planted rosemary, lavender, and mint. Nothing major, just something alive. One evening, Jason shouted, "Grandma, there's a deer in the yard." I rushed outside in my robe, and yes, there he was. A young buck, standing still, watching us. We locked eyes, and then he bounded into the bushes. I smiled. The deer was a sign of healing, of grace. I hugged Jason close. "Was that a Christmas miracle?" he asked. "No, baby. That was life, coming home. I am Vivian Hale, a mother, a sister, a grandmother. A woman who survived lies, betrayal, and fear, and chose love anyway. And if I had to live it all again to find this peace, I would." Spring brought more than blooming magnolias in our yard. It brought real change. Malcolm finally removed his wedding ring, symbolically. He hadn't worn it in months, but couldn't bring himself to take it off. That ring was the last thread tying him to the past. And the night he placed it in a small box and handed it to me, I knew my son was back. "Keep it," he said. "Let it sit. I've got nothing left to hold on to from her." Meanwhile, the investigation into Candace deepened. Leroy kept me updated. Turns out, she was only a piece in a much larger network of people laundering money through fake real estate deals and bogus children's charities. Her benefactors gave her access to high-profile clients, whose trust she then used to drain funds. And yes, she knew my sister. Maria confirmed she met Candace at an investment forum in Los Angeles. She mentored her for a while, until she realized Candace wasn't just ambitious, she was dangerous. When Candace's trial began, I was called to testify. I didn't want to see her again. But I knew I had to speak. For Malcolm, for Jason, for every woman who'd ever been told to sit down and be quiet. I stood before the jury and told my story, not for sympathy, for truth. I spoke about how she pushed me out of the family, manipulated my son, forged documents to steal my house, and nearly broke us. Then Malcolm took the stand. His voice shook, but he spoke clearly. He said, "I was blind. I don't make excuses. But please, don't let her go unpunished. She'll do this again. To someone else. A man, a woman, a child. This isn't a one-time mistake. This is who she is." The sentence was harsh. 18 years in prison. No possibility of early release. As they escorted her out, she looked at me. For the first time, no smirk, no mask, no venom. Just a blank stare. I looked away. She no longer belonged in my story. But another judgment was waiting for me. A personal one. Maria came back to Louisiana. Not permanently, just for a time. She wanted to apologize to Malcolm, to see Jason, and to look me in the eye and say sorry, not in a letter, not on a screen, but face to face. We walked along the riverbank, silent. Then she said, "I don't deserve to be part of this family." "Maybe not," I said. "But you and I, we both made mistakes. We just chose different kinds of silence." "Are you still angry?" "I am, but I don't live there anymore." She smiled. And for the first time in decades, I saw my sister again. The one who baked cookies with me at Christmas, skipped school dances, and laughed until we cried under the covers. "Give me a chance," she said. "Not like before, but at least to be nearby." I nodded. That's where we'll begin. Summer passed in laughter and purpose. Jason started school. Malcolm found joy in teaching again. I planted a herb garden. Life returned in little ways. And one morning, Jason shouted, "Grandma, there's a poem I wrote for you." He handed me a folded paper. "Grandma's house is a big soft hand. It keeps me safe from dark and sand. It smells like cookies, feels like light. And I sleep well in her hug at night." I cried. But not from pain. From fullness. This was my verdict, not the court's. Not revenge, not triumph. But a home, full of light. I am Vivian. They tried to erase me, but I rewrote the chapter. And yes, there was drama, mystery, betrayal. But also forgiveness, grace, and love. This year, Christmas arrived quietly. Not with the roar of fake cheer or forced dinners, but with a soft morning chill, the smell of fresh cinnamon, and the light creak of floorboards as Jason tiptoed to the kitchen in his pajamas covered in reindeer. Malcolm was decorating the tree, really decorating it, with care and heart, as if trying to repair the past with garlands and light. I was baking my sweet potato pie from memory, though I still kept the recipe notebook open beside me, a small ritual of honoring the old ways. Maria called on video. She was sitting near a fireplace, holding a knitted mug. "You look happy," she said. "I am. Thank you for not erasing me." "I held on to my pain for too long, Maria. But letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing life." She nodded. And for once, she didn't cry. She smiled. That evening we had guests. Pastor Henry and his wife brought their famous pumpkin pie. Leroy came with his new lady friend. Finally, someone who could handle his sarcasm. The house buzzed with warmth, not stress, not tension, just joy. Then came the moment I'd dreaded all evening, the toast. I stood up with my glass of wine. Everyone quieted. This year, I buried old fears. I buried anger. I buried the version of myself that was walked over and manipulated. And I resurrected something more important: me. I looked around the room. These were my people, my true circle. When someone tells you that you don't belong in their life, don't take it as rejection. Take it as an invitation to walk out of their shadow, to build your own house. I raised my glass to home, not made of bricks, but of memory, pain, forgiveness, and love. After dinner, I stepped out into the backyard. The night was still. The stars shimmered. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the same note I had received after Charles died. He left with secrets, but he loved you truly. Now I knew he may have had his own truths, his own ghosts, but I no longer carried anger. He was human too, with his faults, his regrets, and, yes, his love. I lit the corner of the note. The flame danced, then consumed it. When the ashes floated into the sky, I felt lighter. Later, Malcolm approached with a small box. For you. Just, for everything. Inside was a silver necklace with a heart-shaped locket. Inside the locket, a photo of the three of us, me, Malcolm, and Jason, taken recently in the park. This is my present, he said, and my future. Tears welled up, but they weren't from grief. They were the kind that come when you finally arrived, home. Late that night, I sat by the window. Snowflakes tapped the glass. In the house where there had once been silence and tension, now slept my grandson and my son, safe, warm, and whole. I am Vivian Hale. A woman who was cast out, but who came back stronger. And this isn't a story about being uninvited. It's a story about building a better table. And choosing who gets to sit with you. Forever. When you go through a storm, it's hard to believe you'll ever wake up in peace again. Not the hollow kind, but real peace. The kind that feels like early morning stillness before the world begins to hum. That's what this winter was for me. I woke to the sound of rain on the roof. Jason was still asleep, curled like a kitten in his blanket. Malcolm had already gone to work, leaving me a note on the kitchen counter. Warm the oatmeal, Ma. Love you. I sat by the window with a mug of tea and looked around the house. Everything still reminded me of the past, but nothing hurt anymore. Now, it all just breathed. A few weeks after Christmas, I received a letter from Candace. Typed, not handwritten. No emotion. Cold. In it, she asked for one thing: to write a letter to Jason. No apology, no remorse. Just, I am his mother. I only ask to be heard. I stared at those words, then placed the letter in a drawer. I didn't tear it up. I didn't burn it. But I didn't pass it on either. Because love isn't just biology. It isn't a title or an obligation. It's a choice. And she lost the right to make that choice long ago. Maria stayed. Slowly, quietly, she began finding her way back into our lives. A few phone calls, a visit on Mother's Day. Jason started calling her Auntie Mia, and for once, she didn't cry, she just laughed. That was the sign. Some secrets you release, others you forgive, and the rest you simply learn to live beside. I started writing again. Not a memoir, a cookbook, but not just ingredients, stories. I laced each recipe with memory. The time Malcolm burned pancakes because he fell in love. The soup my grandmother made when I had the flu. The cookies I baked that last Christmas before everything fell apart. I titled it, Salt, Tears, and Strength, Recipes That Heal. Today marks almost exactly 1 year since I received Candace's text. You're not invited to Christmas. The irony? That message gave me the greatest gift of all. She set me free. I stopped begging for a seat at someone else's table. I built my own. I stopped searching for love from those who used it as currency. I returned to those who never asked for payment. I stopped letting anyone determine my worth. I finally knew it myself. That evening, we gathered again. Jason read a new poem he wrote at school. Grandma's house is big and kind. It hugs me close and clears my mind. It smells like cinnamon and pie, and helps me sleep when dreams go by. I cried. Not from pain. From gratitude. This was my legacy. Not the revenge. Not the courtroom win. Not the mortgage. But the light that returned. I am Vivian Hale. A woman who was pushed out, but who walked back in with her head high. My story isn't about being rejected. It's about coming home and choosing who gets to stay. Forever.